As gamers, we often develop certain behaviours that other people might deem unusual, but in our minds they are perfectly logical things that can help improve our gaming skills or help us critique a new game.
We can even do odd things just for the fun of it despite knowing it might completely ruin our save, but we just can't help it.
We love to see what will happen when we do naughty things or choose a dialogue choice or action that is clearly the wrong choice. Hello, I'm Heather.
And I'm Craig, and today we wanted to outline 5 of the strangest things that gamers do. Some games allow the player to make gameplay and dialogue choices throughout which can determine how the story might unfold. One strange thing that gamers do is intentionally make bad decisions because there's something alluring about turning to the dark side in a virtual world with no real life consequences. However, the consequences within the game can be disastrous and you can really mess up a save by being so unwise. A prime example of this is in Bioshock, where you can choose whether to save the little sisters or harvest Adam from them. Most new players will find themselves running low on Adam, and so may naively choose to harvest Adam, like Heather did.
What? She's a little devil girl who clearly needed putting down, and what can I say? I needed Adam.
Obviously it was a bad decision, but little did she know that choosing to basically always murder these demon children would result in seeing the bad ending of the game. Another example of this terrible decision making is in Skyrim, where you can kill anyone you want to, and many people decide to go on huge killing sprees, murdering all the NPCs in sight, which can literally break the game. In the case of games like Fallout 3, Mass Effect and Biomutant, the player can choose good or evil paths, represented by Karma in Fallout, Paragon and Renegade in Mass Effect, and Light and Dark Aura in Biomutant. Which path you choose can make a big difference. For instance, bad karma in Fallout 3 will result in NPCs being more generally aggressive and negative toward you, and it can also determine what companion you can use. Sometimes the game makes you feel so bad for intentionally choosing the evil route that you have to quickly abandon your days of insulting the always awesome Garrus in Mass Effect, or punching disaster survivors in the face in Biomutant instead of helping them. It can weigh heavy on your heart.
Good work, clever clogs. Let me guide you into the dark.
Gaming graphics have come a long way, and sometimes games can make us stop and admire the beauty. I must have spent so much time in games lingering over the most inane graphical details, and sometimes find myself saying weird things like, "That is a great wall, check out this brick!"
I like that boulder. That is a nice boulder.
Or staring at the intricacies of floor designs thinking, somebody actually sat there and designed this. The graphics in Red Dead Redemption 2 are actually astounding, and graphics lingering in this game is one of the main reasons to play. You can spend such a long time looking at how Arthur Morgan and NPCs interact with the environment, such as how boot tracks and horse hooves are formed in the mud, and how the rain, fire and lightning impacts your surroundings. It's all very impressive to look at. The only other game that I would consider to be in the same graphical masterpiece category would be Ghost of Tsushima. Sucker Punch's mastery over character designs and landscapes is astounding, not to mention the realistic weather such as the wind blowing through the grass and seeing lightning streak across the sky. Water is another one that can make you stop and have a good hard look at the graphics. Whether it's realistic looking water, water that looks better than real life, or even animated water that looks sparkling and gorgeous, it can distract gamers from completing their set task for a few minutes at least while we go for a splash. An example of this is Dragon Quest XI, where I literally stopped to stare at the water graphics for about 5 solid minutes, but unfortunately we're unable to swim in that game. It does make sense to linger on graphics that are supposed to be steeped in realism, such as RDR2 and Tsushima, but when it's a game that is animated, it makes it stranger somehow, being amazed at the beauty of inanimate objects that are not meant to look real, like in Trials of Mana, Ni no Kuni, Dragon Quest and Tales of Arise, all animated games with amazing graphics.
Controller movements is a strange phenomenon which might look odd to onlookers who might assume we are merely immersed. While that is somewhat true, controller movements make perfect sense in the mind of the player whose skills significantly improve. It makes the same logical sense as blowing into the old N64 cartridges to get them to work, and it totally did. For those under 30 years of age, N64 cartridges were like PC floppy disks. Hang on, that analogy just creates more generational problems, not less. They were more like cassette tapes that you inserted into the game console slot. Wait, no, same problem. Oh, forget it, I'm old, okay? Even my analogies are outdated, so just use your savvy tech and Google it, young peoples. Anyway, perhaps it's the placebo effect, or positive thinking or something, but doing things with the controller can 100% influence gameplay and player skill level. For Pressing buttons harder make you inflict more damage, sticking your tongue out can improve concentration, trying not to breathe or make a sound in real life can minimise the risk of in-game enemies detecting you when in stealth mode, sitting forward means business for a difficult boss about to get owned simply because you sat forward, moving a controller in different directions when on a driving game can completely influence direction, it all makes perfect sense. This is the same as how I always creep my neck to see over things or look around corners in a game in tandem with my character. I'm told it doesn't quite work like that, and my own efforts have no bearing on the game physics itself, but I'm totally sure that it does, and I won't be convinced otherwise.
It's so fun to test the boundaries of realism in games and have a play with the physics. Gamers become natural-born critics when it comes to testing realism. We pick apart every aspect of the world design, as if we are scrutinisingly trying to find things to moan about that the developers might have overlooked.
He can't understand why you'd do such a thing.
Why do we do this exactly instead of just playing the game? It's a complete mystery. If there are cracks in the realism, we want to know about it for some reason. There's the basic things that gamers do straight away, such as checking if your FPS character actually has legs, jumping off high places to see if the gravity works properly and we fall to our deaths, or if we miraculously survive, or checking out the lip syncing to see if the character's mouths move in sync with the words being spoken instead of just opening and shutting like a fish. Other things we do is check how weather and the elements affects the environment and how they respond to us interacting with them. For example, are our footprints left behind in the snow and does it look realistic? Is our shadow being cast correctly based on the positioning of the light? Are the water graphics realistic and does the water ripples react to our presence correctly? Does fire interact with the environment properly and burn in a realistic way? Is our clothing wet when it rains or when we exit bodies of water? Does our character go up and down the stairs correctly? That last one is my obsession. I want every game character to be able to walk up and down the stairs by taking each step at a time instead of floating over them for no reason. Not sure why it bugs me, but I was overjoyed when I saw that Quantic Dream has done this in Detroit Become Human. I nearly cried tears of joy as my character took each step at a time. It was strangely satisfying to watch, and I don't mind admitting that I spent enough time for it to be considered strange just watching my character go up and down the same set of stairs several times.
One of the most tragic things that can happen to a gamer is getting buyer's remorse. We can wait for years for a new release, spend that little bit extra on a pre-order and special perks, only to play the game and realise it hasn't lived up to the expectations, and we completely regret shedding out all that money instead of waiting for a price drop just so we could play the game on the day of release.
There are many reasons why buyer's remorse can occur. Sometimes a new release is ridiculously buggy like Cyberpunk was. It could be too difficult or grindy, feel like a soulless cash grab or a lazy remaster. It might have one major flaw we simply cannot overlook, such as the camera in Star Ocean 5 and the lack of fast travel in Dragon's Dogma. Or the game can feel too far removed from previous installments in the series. A common gripe from old school Zelda and Final Fantasy VII fans after Breath of the Wild and the Final Fantasy VII Remake was released. In many instances, games could turn out to be not what we were expecting, or they can simply not mesh well with us and there might not even be a real explanation for why.
People don't like admitting when they have made a mistake, wasted money, or admitting that a game series they adore has just jumped the shark. I'm looking at you, Mass Effect 3. So instead of admitting we don't like the game, we play it and force feed it to ourselves to try and make ourselves love it, or at least get value for money, despite being secretly miserable and too stubborn. An example of this was when I bought Crash 4 It's About Time. I adore Crash Bandicoot and I consider myself an expert in those games, but all I did with Crash 4 was rant and rave at the difficulty, box placements, unrealistic expectations of players, and more. But I was much too stubborn to be defeated, especially after spending so much money. I know Crash is hard, he has a reputation for hard games and levels, but I found that Crash 4 threw too many elements and too many new ideas at the player at once, and it will always pain me that I will never 100% this game. And since I'm talking about franchises that I love that let me down, hello Mass Effect Andromeda. Now I don't hate this game, I'm just disappointed. All the elements were there for this to be great, but Andromeda was such a misfire for the series that I'm still worried all these years later about the state of Mass Effect 4, or whatever they want to call it. Anyway, I forced myself to play right through both games to the end and vowed to never play them ever again.
But major points for effort. Another example of this is when I played Dragon Quest XI, a game I was confident that I would absolutely adore as someone who loves these kinds of lengthy animated JRPGs. But despite starting and stopping game saves about 10 times, I simply couldn't get into the game. It still saddens me that I couldn't, and I also couldn't put my finger on why. We just didn't gel very well, and I spent so much time in denial thinking this time I will love this game. But 20 to 30 hours in, I still couldn't get pulled in and always ended up simply obligation playing. Craig experienced something similar with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. He could never get into the game, despite it being the exact kind of game he would normally love. He just can't explain why the game didn't grab him, but he has certainly tried over and over again to replay the game and force himself to like it without success.
So yes, playing games we're not enjoying through stubbornness and denial of buyer's remorse is definitely a strange thing that us gamers embrace on a regular basis, and we will even go as far as defending a game and our decision to purchase it to others. So there we have it, there's 5 of the strangest things that gamers do. Our actions and behaviours might seem odd to others, but to us they are not strange at all. They improve our reflexes, concentration and critical analysis skills, all valuable skills in life gained through endearing quirks that just make us more charming and lovable.
Or so we keep telling ourselves. Let us know in the comments if you are guilty of doing any of these things, or if you can think of any other strange gamer behaviours that are not featured on the list. I've been Heather.
And I've been Craig. This is Amalgamingle, and thank you very much for watching.